Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and today we're looking at a story about my uncle, which is a long title for a game, and like most games, also kind of generic in that it'd be kind of difficult to type in the word uncle into Steam and get this game if you're looking for it. If you missed the keyword story, A is not going to help you, about's not going to help you, my is not going to help you much. Um, so you pretty much have to get it on the nose, and that tends to be a detriment to a lot of games that have these names. Of course, there are a lot of games also that are just intentionally designed that way to create name confusion, and so they'll make something like Pray Pray to confuse people into buying that instead of Prey from Bethesda. And even the big AAA game developers really fail to adopt unique names or even subtitles to identify their names. So it probably would be better at this point if every game had its developer put their name in front of a story. Speaking of this developer, this is the developer of this game, and then uh, the this game, and then Goat Simulator, the 3 or 4 iterations and releases of this. Interesting, the controller there did not want to pop up the audio, so I had to switch over to the mouse. But yeah, subtitles were on by default as far as this was. Resolution was not at 1080, and I had to adjust that. We have also motion blur was on by default. I turned that off. MSAA was off by default. Gamma at 0.5 is actually probably wrong, but how they're measuring it is clearly wrong too, because that is fairly blown out. They've created a scale here where you could have twice the gamma. Gamma is the difference between the blackest black and the whitest white, and any game like this then has sliders that are just like impossible to get to the exact setting. Uh, were there any more options under audio? No. I'm gonna try and play this with an Xbox One controller, but since this is kind of a parkour jumping platforming looking game, I wouldn't be surprised if the controls are a little wonky. I wouldn't be surprised if this is the game that then motivated the developers to spend what feels like the last decade making just Goat Simulator games. And Goat Simulator is funny for what it is, but it really falls fairly flat as an actual game that if you were actually just trying to play it without being in on the joke. We've got some unlockables here: a goat mode, a Midas mode, an acrobatic mode, and a beam color mode, um, which might mean something. And then language, oddly, is just left at a default. Uh, is there anything else we need to mention? Extras, there's a time trial mode. Probably won't want to get that deep. Interesting that it has a continue mode at the beginning. And that's pretty much all I know. I didn't do a lot of research just on this one. A lot of times, going and looking up a Wikipedia on a game is kind of pointless because there's very
Dad,
little or there's just
Aren't you
nothing.
sleeping yet? It's time for bed, honey.
Dad, I can't sleep. Can you tell me a bedtime story?
All right. What do you want to hear?
Something about an adventure.
Hmm. I think I know just the thing. When I was your age, my biggest dream was to follow my Uncle Fred on one of his adventures around the world. One day, he disappeared.
So Fred is the father's brother. He was left stick to move. See, man, that is fairly dark in here. Um,
I stepped into the lobby of my uncle's house. It lay just across the hill from where I lived with my mother, your grandmother. She had tried to keep me from going, but I wanted to see if Fred was home yet from his latest adventure.
So we've probably got a crazy uncle scenario here. I'm seeing a decent amount of screen tearing, but I also don't think that this is actually the game setting that we will be doing much of. We can right bump to zoom. And let's see. We've got some books. We've got some images. What look like real images and real photos of people. So this is probably a made-up story. Although he did seem to imply that the daughter who's getting the bedtime story told to her is familiar with the uncle going on travels. You have interesting books and masks and a lot of stuff that probably are just pre-bought assets from a Unity or Unreal engine store, but possibly they spent that extra expense to have a theme and character building experience here instead of plenty of other games where this would have been a much emptier. To Uncle from Fred. Well, that's questionable now because is it the father's uncle or is it the daughter's uncle? Because those are different things. But it is totally possible that it is the daughter's uncle, and there is a Fred who he is also an uncle to. You can see some highlighting of some sort around the map. It would have been very, very easy to have a lot less here. Ironically, I recently played a puzzle game that I swear had this exact same diver's helmet in it. And wrenches probably would be fairly familiar. Colas and drinks, all fairly familiar. And the fact that you can zoom in is nice, but you still really couldn't read all this text, not at 1080p. This is one of those games where it has been catching my attention for a while, but it never was so amazingly highlighted. And in a lot of ways, when this game came out, I would have been heavily focused around playing games that were recommended to me by big video game review sites of the likes of like Giant Bomb and such. And so if, for instance, Giant Bomb just never covered this game, or I never saw their coverage of this game, then it would have fallen to the bottom. It says a story about my uncle, but there's no buttons to do there. Press right trigger to interact. Well then, could I have interacted with anything before this? I think the answer is no. This might be a hub world where we interact with the map in other areas. So they want me to interact with this and potentially ignore other things over here.
I had visited Uncle Fred's house countless of times, but in the locker, which usually was closed, I found something I hadn't seen before. It was an adventure suit. It resembled the one that Fred used, but smaller in size.
So, no jumping. So the uncle's name is Fred. To Uncle Fred, you have a drawing. Oh, that makes more sense. I misunderstood. I thought that was to Uncle, comma, Fred.
My uncle used to send me postcards from his long journeys. Greetings from Nepal, Galapagos, Kilimanjaro, the Amazon River. This was the first time he had left without a word, without sending cards.
Here we have Greenland being owned by Denmark. So that probably dates the locations of where he's been. A little surprising that he wouldn't have been to more parts of Russia. But alright. So this feels like this is just a world where adventures exist, where in video games there probably needs to be more worlds where adventures exist and adventures exist. Ton of trash, though, and a lot of propane. Can't turn the light off. Fantastic Fred's disposal system. I kind of feel like I might get caught up in doing a very basic tutorial mission just to clean up this house. There's growing tomatoes indoors. And then we've got a very different looking door here. So Fred apparently expected you to put on the suit.
Curiosity got the better of me, and I tried it on. It fit like it had been custom made for me.
Of course, one of the problems here we can see you have a relatively young male character. One of the problems here, though, you will run into is the idea that he's going to put you in danger.
My uncle's house was the observatory. There he kept his newest experiments, and right now it held a pad used for disposing of garbage. Uncle Fred had warned me not to touch any of his things. But, as I said, I was a curious child.
Yeah, there's a danger here as far as just how young this character is going to be. Welcome to Fred OS Volume 0.03. Pull the lever to launch. Okay. And that's going to send me up into the sky into a very different experience. We've had a very slow thing. There is also the problem where this is supposed to be a story. And if this is supposed to be a story, there's only so much. It moved me onto the platform. And now it's adjusting the camera automatically and launching me to the sky. So a game like this can't refer back to the fact that you're telling a story like The Princess Bride too often, or you realize in the same way that The Princess Bride is like a story being told to a sick child for like 2 hours straight.
I landed with a crash, but thanks to the suit I wasn't hurt. I had no idea where the pad had taken me, but back then I didn't care so much about where I was going or how I would get home.
And so we have a thing that when I zoom in vibrates. Why is the vibration button not like the zoom button now doesn't zoom? Why establish that then? Seriously, why establish that the zoom button is the right bump and then all of a sudden it stops being the right bump? Let's see, well, what have we got? We've got some platforms that A button is just a standard bump. So we can get up here. Which doesn't seem to do anything. You have a very floaty jump here. And the possibility that you might clip through a floor if you go in the wrong direction always, and possibility that there's a lack of success potentially in trying to land without falling off an edge. Also seems like you are fairly short. Let's just, for measurement's sake, here you have some kind of anchor and you're not taller than that. Here you can easily, without crouching down, unless I am crouched down at the moment. Like, nope, doesn't seem like there's a button for crouching down, so you're just a very short character. This is about as much as I've seen of the press and hold left bump to run, good to know, of the game. Your progress has been saved, thanks. And I know we're going to be doing some jumping and platforming, and I generally...
The suit protected me from falls on the ground, but not in water. I couldn't swim with this thing on. Best be careful.
Now, I recently covered a game, relatively recently, called Valley, where you were in a suit that let you run really fast and jump, and you were in this valley that it also let you suck the life out of characters and then bring it back. It was not a mechanic that actually got used very well. I wouldn't be surprised if a story about my uncle and Valley were developed around the same times, and there were people sharing the same ideas, but running around and platforming and jumping is in a lot of ways just the evolution of what a Sonic game is, particularly if you need to bring it to a 3D realm, which you pretty much have to for almost all games these days. They're doing a good job of pointing us in a decent direction. And I'm a little surprised I could make a short hop just by tapping the controller. Hold right bump to charge up soup and release for a power jump. Yeah, I had done that before. But the game probably didn't expect you to have done that before. Because that's a fairly slow jump.
Sure that someone had been here before me. Someone had built these bridges and carved these symbols, but who? Where were they now?
And apparently it's fairly standard to have floating rocks, because there's no comment on that aspect. Of course, a lot of these bridges are also broken. Charge up the suit and release right bump while sprinting for a power leap. That felt a little bit luckier than I would have liked. Well, I landed.
I found a strange gizmo, some sort of measuring tool that Fred must have built. It seemed to be done measuring, though, so I took the results to give to Fred.
It's funny he's just going to call him Fred. If he's really your uncle, why wouldn't you call him Uncle Fred? And frankly, if you're telling a story to your child, you usually would call him Uncle anyways. Like, you don't want to encourage your kids to start naming adults by the first name on the rare occasion you might run into the one adult that would take great offense or act particularly negatively to that. Okay. So we've got collectibles. We know that much. And let's see what this splash does. Not too bad. Am I in the wrong place, or did that just turn me around? Hmm. How did I do that before? Run, jump. Okay, it's the A button. But also it feels very much like the game kind of intentionally makes it so you're not going to actually make it if you randomly... You got to the edge there. So everything's telling me that this is probably not doable. That, unless I'm doing it wrong, which I might be doing it wrong, might need to, let's see, run, release, and jump at the same time. Like that would be like a 3-card combo. Nah, I don't see it. There must be some other ability. Seriously, is help? Okay, right bump to power jump. Right, trigger the grapple. We don't have the grapple yet. Left bump to run. Okay. Like it just told me how to do this. Okay, it's letting go of the right bump. Unfortunately, that does mean I think I probably can't make it to jump back this way. Like almost certainly can't make the jump back now. Let's see. Because I'd have to charge up this, run here. And see, it just doesn't want to really work. So I might actually be fine. Let's see. Run, jump. Yeah. The controls are wonky, to say the least. We need to go that way. Which pretty much means I need to, if I was going to do that, I need to be able to run off the edge and then hit the other edge, and that little fall here is what's killing me. And they almost certainly did that on purpose. Just checking, and the grapple is not working. I assume we are not crawling up vines in this game. And I guess they just want us to jump this way. Again, that felt like I barely made that. There's a lot of reassurance in this game that I have to appreciate. That this doesn't feel like a single A game. This feels like a double A game. Potentially even trying to be on the verges of being a triple A game. So seeing all this detail and all of the different environments, and not just having a generic world with floating platforms that felt like they were just from a pre-made asset from a store, even though in all fairness probably all the rocks, all the plants, all the foliages are individually pre-made assets, but they've been mixed and matched to feel like a natural organic environment.
The power cord
grapple.
found activated the suit's grappling device when I picked it up. It must have been left here by my uncle.
Yeah, he's making a lot of assumptions. Okay. So now that we have the grapple, is there any hope at all of getting back up that direction? Aim and hold right trigger. Nope. Okay. So I'd have to basically fling myself up this far. And maybe... See, this might be one of these two-finger games where you have to fling yourself up and grapple at the same time. Interesting. Bigger marks not counting. Is that because it's a distance issue? Or is it... Yeah. It seems like you place a mark wherever you have grappled before. Yeah. So that's apparently a helping issue. Which now we know that at least this symbol does mean that. And clearly there are some areas that are easier to grapple than others, in the sense that they might be a magnet on one side and your grapple is a magnet on the other side. There are 2 more energy pellets, so we may come back to these levels later and get all the collectibles. That is what you would expect from a game like this, is a rejuvenation of a return to the levels and reuse of the levels, which can often, like, this will light up when you're arranged to grapple. Alright, so we now know that we can grapple about that far. No checkpoint there. An almost certain death. Let's see. If you're gonna grapple, though, you pretty much have to grapple.
Left a sort of symbol everywhere I grappled. I noticed similar symbols already there in the cave, and I was getting more and more certain that this place was where Fred had gone.
Okay. So we could grapple there, or we could just grapple there. And at a certain point we could stop grappling. Here's the problem. That one's floating above a gap, and that one's floating above a gap, so I don't think I want to grapple onto these floating pillars. As fun as that might be. Of course, you also run into an issue where you could just fling yourself forward, which, again, that does kind of feel like an attempt to make something yeah. Down we go. They didn't animate the splash, which I'm fine with. By releasing while grappling. I don't know what the first sentence there was. Assume it's swing. Or fling. Yeah, this one's knocked over. So what allows one of these floating cubes to fall over? Do they have to be in pairs? Is that it? Yeah. You potentially could run into trouble with a game like this, in that the entirety of the game may just be more than than players might want, more repetition than players are normally used to. You have a decent amount of air control here, and kind of, I would say, a superior amount of movability to start off with. There's a Japanese game where you swing and the entirety of it is swinging. It's or Umihari. Nah, I can't remember how to pronounce the name. But there's like 3 or 4 games in that series that came out relatively quickly. We follow this Japanese girl swinging around on a fishing hook and line, basically. Okay. Combine the power jump and the grapple to reach high areas. So, we do now know that combine power leap and grapple to reach far off areas.
Was fantastic. By combining a power leap with a grapple, I could fly long distances through the air at great speed.
Interesting that there's a mention there of the ability that we're about to get, but not so much. Yeah, and this is a double button game from the looks of it. Yeah, well, that in itself is a triple button. So let's start with some input options. Controller layout, stick layout, button layout. Reverse. That wouldn't be any better. Why is the jump button the only button here that is being used on the face? Why not have power jump be B? Grapple I get for right trigger. Run I get for left trigger, although you might also have run just be X because you could hold down X and hit A fairly easily. There's 1 of 5 collectibles. I don't know why that's in all the menu, but whatever. So run, leap, drag, and then don't fling yourself forward. Seems like we are probably going in a full circle here. Let's see. Am I supposed to be up there? Or am I supposed to go that way? See, that's crazy because that grapple just takes you way further than some of the other grapples. Can I just jump and grapple? See, here's the problem, and this is the problem you run into with Sonic games too, and I guess that will be probably a good comparison. The Valley games, I don't really think much happened in the Valley games, but there's a lot of places I think in the Valley games where you were particularly in a open field area, so it wouldn't have really mattered so much if you'd fallen. Here it seems like you're totally... I feel like I might be going in circles. Yeah, either I missed something and got turned around, or the goal of this is to get back up to where you started. When grappling a moving object, it will follow along. Okay. So what did we do last time? Has the entirety of the map potentially changed? Yeah, it still feels fairly easy to just overshoot your shot. Okay. Yeah, and you cannot grapple apparently areas that are not relatively within your path. So kind of needs to be an explanation of there's a collectible here. I can hear it. There we go. Bring myself back up. I can say with some certainty I'm not a huge fan of the button layouts. This is a very PlayStation style idea of having your middle finger on the left triggers and right triggers, and that just does not work for me. It's not the way I've ever played with controllers, and frankly I just don't have the level of control to make good use of that. My pointer fingers have always toggled between being used for the bumps and the triggers, and it's pretty much a big no-no to use a right bump and a right trigger in the same action. Inherently you do have this situation where there are a decent amount of buttons on a modern controller, sometimes a lot more than what a game developer needs, sometimes less than what a game developer really would like to have, but there's still a level of potential poor design that you can run into as far as the implementation of the buttons. It would be really nice if something on the D-pad did something. Toggle running with the left on the D-pad would be real nice. I don't know if I'm going forward or backwards or what. It just feels like the entirety of the map reconfigured itself. I definitely appreciate going through a cave like this though and seeing water and not just being in an empty skybox where you'd fall to your death. It shows a level of polish. Of course, it also means more textures, for better or worse. It wants me to apparently jump that direction and then hope I can lock on to that, which will then swing me around, or I'm supposed to go that direction. Like, really crazy we lost the zoom. That's also very weird. Alright, I'm just gonna go straight this way. And Alright, well, this landed me somewhere. But I don't know if that's where it wanted me to go. Like, oddly, it seems like it was. I'm very confused. I need a map or something. Alright. So we're gonna follow along until we can fling ourselves over here. Like, that's where it checkpointed me. Interesting. It's not really getting me close enough. I feel like I have to get on the outside. This goes around and see it. At about that point I can fling myself up. We can feel like there's an over-reliance on the grapple ability already though. And what was that? Bionic Commando game. That was a game where you had a grapple arm and you were fighting terrorists. And the remake of it was an interesting idea that was developed poorly and almost assuredly not paid for or not budgeted correctly. So, yeah, there's, I suppose, a history of arm swinging games. I guess the real question becomes grapple 2 times before landing. That's helpful. Yeah, I'm not really sure. There's been a case though where grapple games have really worked. Alright. It's still only the same amount of time to charge. So, getting more power cores does not lead to a scenario where you have to wait twice as long to charge up, which that's nice. I think Bionic Commando probably did it right though by having you fighting characters instead of and that was the case where they probably wanted you to jump. No quick jump or power jump, so either you choose to do a regular jump or you have to charge up. But yeah, lit is to indicate how many grapples you have left. Okay, good. I had kind of figured that out, but what is this? Just glowing light bulb plant. A lot of opportunity for there to be a collectible anywhere in a game like this. Yeah, I definitely would say the idea of taking a break from the platforming and moving towards just a standard shooter experience is ideal. Well, am I supposed to charge up, jump, and skip the first rock? I think I am. Nope. Am I supposed to charge up, jump, release, shoot, fling, fling, release, not hit your head on the rock? There is potential problem with having only 5 collectibles on a level like this. It feels like you could have had 2 or 3 different types of collectibles in a game like this, and that would have given you a little bit more to do, or throw some enemies at me. I think I may have seen something crawling up here, but it could have just been rocks floating around, or it could have been that the screen tearing, which screen tearing is pretty bad. We could try and, while we're here, let's see. That's 3. We could try turning on the motion blur. I imagine this is a game that could potentially make a lot of people motion sick real fast. And if you can get past the first level, then I would not suggest going any further. So far, I'm uncertain on the motion blur. Nope, not quite there. Definitely feels like they want you to maintain some momentum. And have some momentum when you jump. They don't want you just to fling yourself. They may have given you far too powerful of a device to start with, frankly. I'm about to get stuck in the ground. Yeah, but that worked. Let's just walk back here to get a general idea of where it wanted me to go. So I kind of flung myself over this direction. I was kind of over here, I guess. Okay. And then next we have a fling that seemingly is just gonna fling us upward. Then we've got another thing that seemingly is gonna fling us upward. I hope I made it. No. This is a kind of weird catch-22 you have with a game like this. Like, ideally, I'd like a break at some point and just to fight something or simply wander around there's a certain point where you fall and you start flailing. Just to have some falling action and not potentially have a game that is going to be 100% rising action, as for lack of a better term. And you've got to swap, I think, a lot earlier. So swap as soon as I think I see the next rock, then lift me up, and then probably not even there. I made it, but that was probably not as cautious. Here we have a carved in symbol, like a cutscene. and it brought down our glove.
Did you ever see any of Fred's experiments yourself?
Yes, I actually helped him collect samples for his research sometimes.
To learn about them?
That's right. We found all sorts of things. One time, we went to the forest and found a small pool of water that was full of eggs.
Eggs? Were there chickens in the forest?
No, not chicken eggs. These were small and jelly-like. Hundreds of them. Fred told me that they were frog eggs. He was in for a surprise, though. Guess what happened?
What? What happened?
Well, we took some eggs back home, and one day, Fred woke up with bites all over his body. Turns out, it wasn't frog eggs after all. It was mosquito eggs.
Ah, poor Fred.
I know. He did find real frog eggs eventually. He told me that they were very, very special, but I don't know what happened to them.
So we're going to have some sections where that might trigger more dialogue with the daughter and the father. And we can see that Uncle Fred was here. Almost certainly we are going to find Uncle Fred has either gone crazy or died. This looks like he was collecting samples or something. After clicking that one thing, which I guess that's what these arrows mean, but I don't know if that the two lines here mean this is the second thing we could have found and we missed something or not. But in the pause menu, there's nothing collectible so far. No other collectible being mentioned. This is another one of those games that has a time trial mode in it, but I'm not sure I really want it. As far as the motion blur, I'm not seeing a major difference. That might just be my eyes, certainly. So I'll leave it on until I find it irritating or see a difference. Like, if anything, I think the motion blur actually probably did help with the screen tearing quite a bit. Of course, you as the viewer wouldn't have been able to see the screen tearing almost certainly anyways. But it certainly is a case of my monitor TV slash my monitor slash TV not being able to get and handle the probably incorrect frame pacing that is going on in a game like this. The micro stuttering and just, well, I when I say micro stuttering, I usually mean something different than just a case of incorrect frame pacing. Incorrect frame pacing is just the idea that it makes 60 frames a second, but it doesn't make a single frame every 60th of a second. It sometimes makes 2 frames in the 60th of a second, and then sometimes skips some. Or it makes more than 60 frames per second, and then poorly handles the extra frames. This is frankly getting a little repetitive at this point. I wonder if I am just in it for a situation where there is no discrete levels, and the best one can expect is that you will, there we go, I pulled myself forward, then we'll get to a different area. Looks like we may be entering a different area. There kind of has to be discrete levels though, because then if there weren't discrete levels, that means there's only 5 collectibles in the entire game, and we then are theoretically extremely close to being done with the entire game. And that not only would be fairly disappointing, it'd be very disappointing, it'd also just be extremely weird. This tree looks like a hand.
These blue lights. Did Fred put them here? Or was somebody else here as well?
This world feels a little bit like the world of Mist in that series. And I certainly could see an idea of trying to modernize a puzzle world, a collection of puzzle worlds, by having some flinging abilities. Alright, well, that was a load. And that was, I guess, that. Alright, well, a story about my uncle so far has taken an hour to get through one level. Very possibly there are not that many levels, 4 or 5, I wouldn't be surprised. It showed us no enemies. It gave us 2 out of the 3 upgrades to the number of grapples we could do, which almost makes me wonder if we'll get at some point 4 or 5, 6 grapples. If that's the only thing this game is going to do, it probably should do that. It gave us an awkward long run jump, and it probably set us up to fail in a couple places as far as collectibles. It gave us a standard jump that we'll almost never use, and we have multiple buttons on the face of the controller that aren't being used, but still the right trigger and right bump are being used for the awkward long jump, which is a mistake. It would be very nice to, at the very least, have those buttons mapped to something else. So could we do that? Let's see. Power jump, right mouse pad, grapple interact, left mouse button. So you can see mouse and keyboard as far as the keys are way easier to use. It's just a standard WSD, left shift, jump with spacebar, power jump with your right mouse, which is not 2 buttons. Or even if it was 2 buttons, it would still be fairly easy to do. Yeah. Stick layout. Southpaw. Normal. These do totally just look like profiles too. It feels like obviously it would have been very easy to make another button layout, and that would have potentially helped me. Is there anything else to say at this point? Unlockables, nothing's unlocked yet. Unlock modifications by gathering Fred's readings in the game. Unlock the first at 10 and a new one every 5 after. So we then do know if there are 5 in each level. There are only 5 levels in this game. Alright, well, that's good to know. Okay, well, that's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend to follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.